Suzi Collins joining me for our very first video for the Power Supply YouTube channel. And obviously we'll be promoting this on LinkedIn and Facebook and all of our social media outlets, as well as yours. And I got to tell you, Suzi, you've been working more and more with Power Supply, especially around content creation. And quite frankly, I'm super pleased to have somebody on the video side to kind of bounce stuff, ideas off of. And one of the reasons that I think we've been working more closely together is your involvement in social media. And that's really going to tee up our conversation today, is the value of social media. And you being somebody who's created TikTok videos and everything else, I think no better person to speak to the value of social media. So we're going to get into that. But I do want to frame this up by saying, we've had a lot of like high level and strategy type conversations on the Power Supply podcast. Meanwhile, you've been creating a lot of content, especially on your TikTok channel, that is geared towards the frontline technician and the more day-to-day practices and how to create those operational improvements. This is an area I think that is so needed. Why did you choose social media as the platform or the vehicle to getting that information out there?
The biggest reason, and hi, Justin, I'm so excited to be, but the biggest reason that I did that is, you know, I participate with ARM at a very high level. I participate with my local chapter. And unfortunately, you know, we have the leaders, which is great, but we don't really get to the frontline workers. So it's a great opportunity to be able to get to those folks that are doing the daily work, moving the supplies and taking care of our clinicians. So that was really the driving force behind it.
Such an underappreciated role. And I think there are a lot of support departments in the hospital that it's been that way for a really long time, especially the ones that often have their offices in the basement. And I really do think that over the last several years, those roles in the organization have started to become, I'd say, much more elevated and important. And even at a C-level, they're looking at it and saying, okay, we've got to find, you know, new ways to tackle this. And I think one of the biggest challenges is development, right? You mentioned, you know, just that we have the leaders and we have the leaders engaged in ARM, but how do we engage, you know, this workforce, many of them very new to not only supply chain, but healthcare too.
Well, and I think the most important thing about their job is truly the why. A nurse, a respiratory therapist, a physician can't take care of a patient unless they have the supplies there to do it. So the role in clinical care is extremely critical. And just like it is for dietary, getting the patients the food and, you know, EVS, making sure the rooms are clean, everything is so important. And I think that helping them with some tips and tricks is great. And I think the other thing is I'm hoping to encourage the managers and directors out there to maybe get more involved in the day-to-day. Sometimes people get stuck behind a desk. Hate to say that, but it's true. So I think that these are just things to kind of change how we look at materials management and supply chain.
And so as far as social media goes, there's also just a lot of information out there that's available, right, to help support that too. So yes, get your hands dirty, but you're still going to have to go as a leader, go do the higher level functioning of your job and to maintain on that and respond to emergencies. And, you know, one thing that's always like sort of struck me, but, you know, sterile processing often has an educator. The OR always has an educator. Supply chain does not have a full-time educator position. So who is supposed to nurture the professional growth and development of these individuals that are coming in? And oftentimes it's an additional burden on leadership. And yes, they absolutely need to get in there and see what's going on and help provide direction. But when you really talk about professional development, getting plugged into ARM is definitely one way. But what about the networking and the conversations and, you know, information share and best practices, or, you know, just having peers? And I think that was an area also during the pandemic, like a lot of the local arm chapters, like you're involved in, that was a great place to get that information share. But all of a sudden we weren't meeting in person and we lost that opportunity. And I think that also held us back a little bit. And I know that those meetings are coming back, which is great. But there are also people that are in remote areas that can't get to their local chapter, in a reasonable amount of time. I feel like social media fills, such a void in that area.
It definitely fills a gap. I mean, we can do a discussion on how do you justify another FTE. And if 30 directors hear that and they suddenly have the idea and they're able to increase their staff size, how fantastic is that? And those are sometimes conversations that don't even happen at an arm or even a chapter level. I want to kind of pick up those subjects that, need to have some light shined on them, right? That don't always get talked about. So I'm excited that we're getting a chance to do this.
So last question, because I think a lot of times people are intimidated to get started in social media. So they might be, hopefully they're already at least somewhat familiar, because it's in all likelihood, they're on social media watching this video right now. So they have some baseline. That doesn't mean that they're engaging or participating. They may just be consuming. You became a content creator. I realize that's a whole other level to create content like you and I are doing right now, but you can still get involved in the conversation by commenting or asking questions. And I think, again, no question is a stupid question when you're trying to facilitate thoughtful discussion. And that's where, I kind of put that out there to the audience. But I also want to ask you this, sharing from your personal experience, and we can kind of wrap, at least this first conversation. This will be kind of an ongoing theme for us.
Right.
But how did you get started? Like, what were the steps that you kind of took? And I know that you've had conversations with your current employer and organization about, why this is important and that it's okay.
Right.
What are just some key steps to that for people out there that might be thinking about becoming more involved?
Yeah, I think the first part is very much what you said. I think especially as COVID was happening, I was going out and looking at LinkedIn more to see what others were doing. I mean, I was looking for those answers because, discussion stopped, and that curiosity about what else is happening in other states, what else is really happening versus what we were seeing on just regular media. And for me, I believe that social media, though can be negatives, there's so many positives just about the information that can be shared. And even in my personal life, it's a journal, right? It's a way to share information. And when it comes to your professional life, share that best practice. So I'd had a LinkedIn for many, many years, but getting more engaged and getting brave enough to write different articles and start posting more, it felt good. And it gave me almost a release and a point of relaxation away from COVID. So that's really was the catalyst.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, especially when you're in a leadership position, there isn't a peer in the organization who can really understand what you're going through because your role is unique. And I can see where having a vehicle to not only put that out there, but also to connect with others at other organizations who are going through the same thing was probably quite valuable to you as well. So we're going to be talking about topics like this and many others and common challenges being faced on the front lines, as well as the leadership that has to help their developing and emerging teams and some of the younger professionals that are joining supply chain, how to really tackle this and address some of those topics. And Suzi, can't think of anybody better to do this with. Super excited to be putting this content together and really appreciate you being willing to do this and continue to share out the good work that you've already been doing on social media.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Power Supply, so I definitely am happy to be part of the family too.
Well, we're a huge fan of Suzi Collins and more to come, everybody. Stay tuned to this YouTube channel or any of the social media postings on these videos. We'll continue to put out more great content. Thanks for joining us today.